Stop the insanity. Get your focus back onto what really matters in life. Your faith, your family, your finances, and your future. Sit back, listen, and change the trajectory of your life. You are listening to the Money for Life podcast. Let's welcome your hosts, Teresa Kuhn and Rick Sapio.
Welcome, everyone. This is Teresa Kuhn and Rick Sapio with Money for Life. Today, Rick surprised me. He wants to talk about something called the Donut Shop Punch Card. I have no idea what this is about, so I'm as intrigued as you are. Rick, what's up with the Donut Shop Punch Card? And you know, that is a mouthful to say.
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, really young kid, I remember my dad taking me to the donut shop on the corner. Actually, we would walk up to the boulevard, make a right. It was a few blocks away, but it was sitting on a corner. And my dad would pull out his card, and the guy would pull out a little puncher and punch a hole. And whenever my dad got 10 punches, the donut shop owner would give him a new card, but my dad would eat free that day. He would have his coffee and his donut. So probably not the best diet, but we all remember those days when we had a card for whatever it was. I'm sure McDonald's had a card at some point, but you know, it's basically something you keep. And I think when Starbucks first opened, they had some version of that. Well, now they have all kinds of different plans that are all electronic, from airline points to frequent shopper cards and all kinds of crap like that. But when I was in my early 20s, many of you know, I built a relationship with Warren Buffett, and I have not had a single conversation with the guy since 1993. But Buffett helped me a lot in setting up my business at the time. And this was way before he was famous. He didn't become famous until 1991, I believe. And that was when he took over Salomon Brothers as the CEO for a short time, when that company was in a lot of trouble. They had made some really big mistakes. And Warren Buffett was famously known for coming out of the woodwork from Omaha and telling the world, listen, I'm taking over Salomon Brothers, and I want everybody in the company to operate as if the world can read everything you do and every decision you make on the front page of your community newspaper. So I want you to operate with integrity from this point forward. Every decision you make, everything you do is going to be front page news. How would that change how you operate? And so one of the things that Warren Buffett talked about a lot, because I've been to his meetings, their annual meetings, many, many times over the years, and he talks about the donut shop punch card. Here's what he says. In life, there's probably 10 very, very big decisions that you're going to make. And I want you to imagine that you've got this punch card in your hand, and what it says is, my massive life decisions. And your goal is to make sure that you get those 10 decisions right. And his theory is that you're only making 10 big decisions, like who you marry, what career you're going to choose, what big investments are you going to make, where you're choosing to live, etc. And his theory is that we all have these big decisions, and yet we treat them lightly. We're frivolous with where we invest our money. We don't really think about it. We diversify all over the place. And his attitude is, no, treat it like you have a punch card and you only have 10 decisions. And if you've got 3 or 4 important investment decisions, make sure they're sacred to you. Make sure that they're massive. So to back up and make sure you understand what I'm trying to communicate is, you have 10 decisions to make in your life, and treat it as if, let's say, for example, you married the person of your dreams. Well, that's 1. Now you got 9 left. Let's say that you picked your career path. Well, that's 2. Now you got 8 left. And make sure you're focusing your life on getting these 10 decisions right, as opposed to, what do? We are so spread out as a culture. Every single day we're making hundreds of decisions. Our attention is spread all over the place. Our phones and computers are loaded with all kinds of crap. And Warren Buffett's very simple advice from this very simple analogy is, you should actually streamline and simplify your life. So you're not having to make thousands of decisions a month. There's statistically proven evidence that people are making hundreds and hundreds of decisions every day, because they're looking at a screen and it's decision. Whereas in the past, 40 years ago, we didn't make that many decisions because our lives were more confined. Now, This is not saying that you shouldn't have a big life and make big decisions, but you should make your decisions in a small number of categories, almost as if you're walking around with this donut shop punch card. Now, Teresa, if you're taking the perspective of the audience listening to this, how do I clarify this so this incredibly important concept is communicated effectively?
First of all, I can say I'm kind of blown away because I have not heard of this analogy. I've heard of the concept of there are certain decisions that can affect the rest of your life. My parents used to tell us that the most important decision you can make is who you can marry. I actually modified that and said the most important decision you can make is who you decide to have a child with, because people may or may not get married, but if they have a child with someone, that person is in your room for the rest of your life. That person will always be the parent of your child, and I mean biological. So I've heard of that concept, but I love the analogy and the visual of the punch card. And they still have punch cards today. Some of the services that I go to often, they'll stamp the card, or there's an app where they track. So that analogy still plays, but you're playing with it backwards. You're saying you only have 10 major decisions, and every time you make one, you're like Xing that off. And it's really, really, really important to be very thoughtful before you make those decisions. I'm blown away. I love this concept.
This is why I'm incredibly passionate about teaching people how to find the right relationship in their life, because one of the massive decisions that people make often is who they marry or who they choose to spend their life with as a partner. And if that's the wrong person, their experience of their life is completely destroyed. It's interesting to watch young people. They don't take a decision like who they marry seriously. The other thing is, who is your best friend? I have seen lives destroyed by people who chose a best friend that was on the other side of the track. And I've interviewed a lot of people in prisons over the years, and you ask them, how did this happen to you? And oftentimes their answer is, I just chose to have the wrong friends. These massive decisions are causing us a lifetime of fulfillment or a lifetime of chaos. And so what Teresa and I are talking about today is very simply, first of all, take your life seriously. Think in advance. What are those massive decisions that I'm going to make in my life? And how can I be more thoughtful about them? Because if you realize that those decisions coming up are one of the 10, then you better be damn straight that that decision is well thought out, completely aligns with your values and your rules and your objectives for your life. And in the areas of that we're talking about in this podcast that we want you to excel at, faith, family, finance, and future, it's very important to get it right.
So, Rick, why don't we help the audience a little bit and have them get some ideas as to the most important decisions that they can make in their life? And there's 10 of them. And you said who you hang out with or who your best friend is, who you end up marrying. I think who you end up having a child with or children with. I think where you choose to live geographically can make a huge impact in your life.
I would say what you choose to learn, i.e., not just what school you went to, but what career track you chose to learn about. For me personally, I chose to get an engineering degree just because it was hard and I thought it would train my brain. And that was one of my punches. But I never wanted to be an engineer. I just wanted to have that knowledge. So that was a decision, the career track you chose. Another big decision is, what career are you in? There's so many people completely and totally unhappy at work. And they're unhappy at work because they use one of their punches for the wrong career and or the wrong career track, i.e. when they were in high school, they picked the wrong path. Where you live, also what vacation home or vacation spots you choose. I have so many friends that live in a house and they have vacation home or 2 or 3, and their life is a complete chaotic mess because now they've got to take care of these other places. So decisions around where and how you take vacations. For me, it's a lot simpler to just go on a vacation and come back, but not have to own a vacation home.
Who you get into business with, that's a marriage. Who you partner with, that's really, really important, right? Super important. That's a massive, like 10, one of the massive 10s. People get into business with people that do not share values or do not share work ethic.
I have a friend, he asked me to consult with him on a new business he was getting into. So that's another one. What businesses would you start or what businesses would you invest in? And I said, listen, if you guys become partners, you are going to have a horrible business relationship. And sadly, they both ended up going to jail for 2 years. And when they went, they were fighting with each other all the way in because they didn't share the same values. And because of that, they ended up getting into massive legal jam. So that happened. So they took one of their punches on their card and they said, we want to start a business and we want to pick a partnership. And so they punched that card and now they're going to pay for the rest of their life with that decision. So those are some examples that people can use their 10 punches on. But the moral of this podcast is very simple. Take the decisions that you make incredibly seriously or relegate them to unimportant and move them from your life. And what I mean by that is we're taking so much time, effort, and energy every day to make really silly decisions on the thousands of apps we have and all this social media, getting completely emotionally tied up in social media crap. You're using energy that should be peace and happiness and fulfillment in life. And you're taking all this precious time out of your life and donating it and giving it to screens that are just going to make you upset. I asked somebody recently, I love asking this question, how many of your online friends will be around you on your deathbed? The answer is none, because the key important relationships in your life, maybe many of them are in your family or people that you've known your whole life that have enriched your life. Those are the people that you need to invest time in, not screen.
Great conversation. Great lessons here, Rick. This is amazing. So one quick question for you. Back in in the early 90s when you worked with Warren Buffett, did you have any idea that you'd be here today on Money for Life sharing this great and very important lesson?
Well, it was so impactful for me at the time that I used to speak about it on stages. It was so impactful. And I want to make sure we're clear. I did not work with Warren Buffett. I actually cold called him and he became a client of my firm and he mentored me for about 3 years. Sometimes I'd have a question for him and I'd ask him and he was very quick with his advice. And I think one of the things that Warren helped me understand is you could be incredibly successful and still lead a very simple life if you have very simple life philosophies like the 10 donut shop punch card.
So was he the one who taught you not to change your cars after like 30 years?
Yeah, I always say, have one house, one car, and one wife.
What a concept.
Yeah, he helped influence that. I think all of us get data from a lot of different places, but we don't form our own life philosophy. I was fortunate in that my life philosophy around simplicity, probability, and leverage and values-based decision making and not having a lot of moving parts in my life and not having a television and all that stuff. A lot of those lessons or philosophies were formed early. So I think many of us, we don't do that. And I'm not sure why we don't. Like sponges, we take in information and we get changed quickly if somebody tells us something because we're not taking new information and comparing that new information to the life philosophy that we've chosen for ourselves. You do that very well. I do that. Many, many people we know do that. I think it makes life way more fulfilling. So there's a song, and I used to hear that line about Marilyn Monroe, like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to turn to when the rain set in. And Elton John, that song, like, I don't want to be a candle in the wind. And he was talking about Marilyn Monroe, just basically in his version of her was she was a candle in the wind. And I think too many of us, especially today, are candles in the wind and we're not rocks. And one of the things that Teresa and I want to express on the audience is this entire podcast is about you being a rock in those 4 areas of your life.
Rick, that's brilliant. I love that. And something else you said was having a life philosophy. That is intentional, informed living. And just putting that out there and thinking about what are my philosophies for living my life. And there's so much conversation about how other people live their lives. We have to start with ourselves. We have to start with me first, my family, my work. Like, what are my philosophies around all those things? So I know you don't like us to tease the audience as to future podcasts and topics that we're going to discuss, but I'm going to throw one out here today. At 13, you made the decision, since you lost your father, that you were going to be mentored by successful people. And you did just that. And Warren Buffett was one of those very successful mentors that you had in your life. And so I want to learn more about other life philosophies that you developed in your life as a result of the mentoring that you received by these people.
Thank you for bringing that up, Teresa. So one of my donut shop punch cards is mentorship, and I'm very careful the mentors I bring into my life, but not having a father and not having a great teenage portion of my life, I realized I've got to be mentored by people, and I soak it up. And it's really funny. Now when people ask me to mentor them, I give them advice and they turn it down. So being a good mentor means taking the advice that people are giving you. I mean, you're asking it, you might as well take it. But sure, I'd love to talk about that on a future episode. And with that, Teresa, thank you for your passion around these 4 important areas. Thank you for your passion around our life philosophies and making those life philosophies our rock. Thank you for listening.
You have just experienced Money for Life. Implement these strategies today and create a life by design. Have a blessed day.